everyone, welcome back. Ready for a deep dive that might just blow your mind?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, so today we're looking into the account of Charles Hall,
Okay.
a former Air Force weather observer who claims he interacted with extraterrestrials. Back in the mid-1960s,
Wow.
we'll be going through excerpts from a YouTube video interview with Charles Hall. And honestly, his story is, well, it's pretty wild.
So what makes this guy's story so special? There are tons of people who claim alien encounters.
Right, but Hall's different. He's trained in nuclear physics, so he's got that scientific mindset.
Ah, so he's approaching it with a more analytical lens. That's interesting.
Exactly. And his level of detail, the way he describes everything, it's really captivating.
I'm intrigued. Let's dive in. What's the gist of his story?
So he was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada as a range weather observer. Sounds ordinary enough, right?
Yeah, pretty standard military stuff.
But then he stumbles upon this secret base within the Nellis Ranges.
Oh, a secret base. What's the deal with that?
He calls it Dreamland.
Dreamland. Sounds ominous.
And it's at Dreamland that he claims he had these regular interactions.
Interactions with who?
With beings he calls the Tall Whites. And I gotta say, the name's pretty accurate.
Tall whites. Okay, now you've got my attention. Before we go any further, can you give me a little background on this Charles Hall?
Well, just from his interview, he comes across as really intelligent and meticulous.
I see. So not your typical UFO enthusiast.
Not at all. He's careful in how he describes things.
Yeah.
He separates his opinions and theories from what he directly observed.
That does lend a certain level of credibility, for sure.
Right. It makes you take him seriously.
So back to Nellis and this Dreamland base. How does he even find this place?
It's not entirely clear, but what we do know is Hall's orders gave him unrestricted access to Dreamland.
Unrestricted access to a secret base. That's pretty unusual, isn't it?
They vary, but there's a catch.
Oh, there's always a catch. What is it?
He couldn't bring anyone else with him.
Alone at a secret base, potentially interacting with aliens.
It's pretty mind-boggling, isn't it? Makes you wonder what the Air Force was thinking.
Yeah, why allow him access alone if these tall whites were potentially dangerous?
Right. It's one of the big mysteries surrounding his story.
Okay, so Hall's alone at this base, and he starts encountering these tall whites. What were they like? I mean, what did they look like?
He describes them as humanoid, but, with some pretty distinct differences.
Give me the details.
Tall, obviously. Strikingly white skin. Large blue eyes.
Like bigger than normal human eyes.
Yeah. And get this, with white pupils.
White pupils, that's creepy.
I know, right? And he observed that sometimes, with age, the pupils turned pink.
Pink? Oh, that's even weirder. What else?
Proportionally smaller ears and noses, and less hair than humans.
Almost like an evolutionary offshoot of humanity.
It's an interesting thought, isn't it?
It is. They're close, but not quite there.
Did he say anything about their behavior, how they moved?
He did. He even noticed that the men and women had distinctive walking styles.
Really? Like what? He observed that the men had this heavier gait, while the women walked in a lighter, almost more animated way.
Huh. I never thought about aliens having distinct genders, let alone different ways of walking.
Yeah, he's really specific in his descriptions.
Okay, so we've got the visuals down. What about their tech? What were they flying around in?
So Hall describes two types of spacecraft.
Two types. Okay, what were they?
Scout craft and deep spacecraft.
All right, break it down for me. What were the scout craft like?
He said they were built with American parts, and they looked kind of like an RV trailer with an ellipsoid interior.
Wait, American parts? They were using our stuff.
It seems that way. He mentioned some sort of technology exchange program.
Whoa. A tech exchange with aliens. So what, were they trading us anti-gravity devices for spare tires?
Not exactly. It's more like they needed certain materials to maintain their scout craft.
Interesting. And they were willing to give up some of their tech in return.
Seems like it, though they were pretty selective about what they shared.
Okay, makes sense. You don't want to give away all your secrets, but I'm still stuck on this deep spacecraft. What were those like?
They were much larger, constructed of, get this, black titanium.
Black titanium. That's pretty high tech. Did he say anything about their propulsion systems? How they got here?
This is where it gets really interesting.
Lay it on me.
Hall believes that Einsteinian physics is incomplete.
Okay, a bold claim.
So he developed his own theory, Hall photon theory.
Hall photon theory. Catchy? And what does this theory say?
It's his attempt to explain the tall whites' anti-gravity technology.
Anti-gravity? You're telling me these guys cracked anti-gravity?
That's what Hall claims.
Okay, I need a bit more here. How did this anti-gravity thing supposedly work?
So picture the spacecraft's hull as like a giant battery.
Okay, I'm picturing it. A big space battery.
And the fiber optic windings he describes. They act like wires, channeling energy to create an anti-gravity field.
Whoa! So they're manipulating gravity with light.
It's wild, right? He even observed them recharging these systems and noted the intense heat generated by the coils.
Intense heat. So this anti-gravity thing wasn't exactly energy efficient.
Apparently not. He said they were very concerned with maintaining optimal coil temperature.
Interesting. Makes me wonder if there were downsides to their technology.
It does, doesn't it? I mean, if they had this anti-gravity tech, did they have weapons too?
That's a good question. If they can manipulate gravity, what else could they do?
Well, according to Hall, they did have weapons,
Right.
and they were terrifying.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah.
What were they like?
He described them as resembling simple white pencils.
White pencils. That's underwhelming.
But here's the catch. They could manipulate elements, like sodium and calcium.
Okay, that's not so underwhelming anymore. How did they use this to, cause harm?
They could use it to inflict pain, incapacitate, or even kill.
Wow. So they could literally weaponize the building blocks of matter. That's intense.
It is. And there's another aspect to their capabilities that's even creepier.
Creepier than weaponized calcium. Okay, I'm all ears.
He claims they could induce missing time experiences.
Missing time. What do you mean by that?
He says they used a form of technologically induced hypnosis.
Hypnosis.
Yeah.
So they could control minds, too.
It seems so. He even describes an incident where he lost nearly 20 minutes just walking between his weather station and the theodolite stand.
And he tributes this to their technology.
He believes they were messing with his perception of time.
Okay, that is creepy. Mind control and time manipulation.
That's-
So it's like something out of a sci-fi thriller.
I know, right? It makes you wonder what their motives were. What were they doing here on Earth with all this incredible tech?
It's a million-dollar question, isn't it? Were they friendly? Hostile? Just curious.
Well, according to Hall, they weren't exactly warm and fuzzy. He described them as very straightforward, either pleasant or dangerous.
No in between. That sounds a bit unnerving. Like, one wrong move and you're toast.
It does make you wonder how he managed to navigate those interactions.
Right. I mean, did they have any kind of social structure? Were they all just running around independently?
He didn't get into a ton of detail, but he did emphasize that they were very family-oriented.
Family-oriented aliens. That's a new one.
I know, right? He said they often traveled in groups, and that the mothers were fiercely protective of their offspring.
Huh. So even with advanced tech and interstellar travel, some things are universal.
I guess so. He also mentioned they had a social structure with specialized roles, military, medical, engineering, that sort of thing.
Interesting. So not just a random collection of beings, but a complex society with divisions of labor.
It starts to paint a picture, doesn't it?
It does. So they had families, they had jobs. Anything else about their culture that stood out?
Well, this might sound a bit strange, but he said they found it odd that humans interacted with animals the way we do.
Really? They found that strange. I mean, it's pretty natural for us to have pets and stuff.
I know, right? But he said it was something they observed and commented on.
Makes you think about how different their perspective must have been.
It really does.
Okay, so we've covered their looks, their tech, even a bit about their society. But I'm still curious, how did Hall manage to communicate with them? Did they speak English? Telepathy?
Not quite. It was a process. He describes a lot of trial and error, trying to interpret each other's nonverbal cues.
I can imagine. It must have been like a really intense game of charades.
Totally. Eventually, they established some basic communication protocols.
Like what?
Well, for example, agreeing on safe distances and avoiding sudden movements. Remember, they were easily startled.
Oh, right, their fast nervous systems. It must have been a delicate dance.
It was. He even talks about them having a sense of humor.
Wait, a sense of humor? Aliens telling jokes?
He describes it as very dry, almost like they enjoyed outsmarting him.
Huh. So they're playing mind games with him, too. This is getting weirder by the minute.
I know, right? It's such a bizarre mix of advanced technology and, well, almost human-like qualities.
It is. It makes you wonder, what was their goal? Why were they here?
While Hall doesn't speculate much on their ultimate motives.
Okay, fair enough. But did he get any sense of their intentions toward us? Were they a threat?
He repeatedly emphasizes that they were very pragmatic, focused on their objectives, not really concerned with human understanding.
So not exactly here to be our buddies, but not necessarily hostile either.
Exactly. More like we were just another part of their agenda.
An agenda we still don't fully understand. This is all so fascinating. I'm eager to hear more about their culture, their interactions with Hall, and what he ultimately made of it all.
Absolutely. We've only just scratched the surface of Hall's story.
Well, let's keep digging. This is one deep dive I don't want to end.
I agree. There's so much more to uncover. Stay with us as we continue to explore the strange and wonderful world of Charles Hall and the Tall Whites. All right, so we're back. Still trying to wrap our heads around Charles Hall and his tall white encounters.
A lot to unpack, that's for sure.
You know, in the last part, something Hall said really stuck with me.
Ooh, what was that?
He mentioned that the tall whites saw Earth as this, well, cold, desolate wilderness.
Yeah, I remember that. Sounded a bit harsh, didn't it?
It did. Like, what's wrong with our planet?
Well, think about it this way. Maybe they've seen other worlds. Planets teeming with life. Ecosystems way more vibrant and complex than ours.
I guess that's possible. Maybe we're just a little plain by comparison.
Exactly. It really highlights how limited our human-centric viewpoint can be.
That's a good point. We're so used to our own environment, we forget there could be totally different standards out there.
Right. Like, what if their definition of wilderness is completely different from ours?
It's a good reminder to stay open-minded, especially when dealing with, potential extraterrestrial contact.
Absolutely. Speaking of different perspectives, I'm still amazed that Hall managed to communicate with them at all.
I know. How did they bridge that gap? Did they have some fancy universal translator gadget?
I wish. No, it was a lot more organic than that.
Organic.
Well, he describes it as a gradual process, a lot of trial and error, learning to interpret each other's nonverbal cues.
So, like a really intense game of charades.
Kind of. They had to agree on things like safe distances, avoid making sudden movements. Remember, they were easily startled?
Right. Those super fast nervous systems.
It must have taken a lot of patience on both sides.
For sure. It's actually a pretty inspiring example of cross-cultural communication. Even if it was with beings from another planet.
Totally. I mean, we struggle to understand people from different backgrounds right here on Earth. Imagine trying to communicate with aliens.
So we've talked about their tech, their looks, even a bit about their culture. But what about their, societal structure?
Right. Did they have a leader? A government?
He doesn't really go into detail about their political system.
Okay, fair enough. But did he encounter any individuals who seemed to be in charge?
Well, remember he talked about that technology exchange program with the Air Force?
Yeah, the whole American parts thing. What were they trading exactly?
It seems like it was mostly a mutually beneficial arrangement. They needed materials for their scout craft.
Makes sense. And we got some of their tech in return.
Supposedly, but Hall doesn't give specifics. He mentions that they were interested in our radio communications technology.
Radios. Why radios?
He specifically says radios they could use on their base. Maybe they wanted to interface with our systems or even monitor our transmissions. It's kind of creepy when you think about it, like giving them access to our world.
I know, right? Did Hall express any concerns about the potential risks?
He doesn't really go there, but it does raise questions, about unintended consequences. Were we playing with fire?
Definitely a Pandora's box situation.
All right, so we've covered their technology, appearance, even a bit about their society and motives. But what about Hall?
Right. How did these experiences affect him?
Well, he comes across as pretty grounded, even when describing these, mind-blowing encounters.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like he's exaggerating or trying to sensationalize things.
It's like he's approaching it from a scientific perspective, trying to make sense of it all.
Exactly. Remember, he developed his own theory of physics to explain their anti-gravity tech.
And that was long before any of the recent breakthroughs in our understanding of gravity.
Right. Makes you wonder if he was onto something.
It really does. Whether you believe his story or not, it definitely makes you think.
Yeah.
Challenges those preconceived notions we have about the universe.
Definitely. But there's one part I'm still struggling with.
Oh. What's that?
The whole secrecy thing. I mean, if these beings were living among us, interacting with the Air Force, Why keep it all under wraps?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? What are they hiding?
It's like there's this whole other reality operating in the shadows.
And we're just completely oblivious.
It's a bit unsettling, to say the least.
It is. But also kind of exciting. Makes you wonder what else is out there.
True. I mean, if this is happening, what else is possible?
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground. Their tech, their culture, the implications for humanity. But there's one more aspect of Hall's story that we need to explore.
Okay, what's that?
His observations about their longevity. He estimated their lifespans to be around 700 years.
700 years. Wow, that's a long time.
Can you imagine living that long, witnessing centuries of history?
It's mind-boggling. Did he mention anything about how they aged?
He said it was a unique process. They would go through growth spurts, even as adults.
So they kept getting taller.
Yeah, but he also mentioned that their internal organs didn't grow proportionally, so they became more fragile with age.
So longer life, but maybe not necessarily a better life.
It makes you wonder about their perspective on time, life and death.
Right. It's hard for us to even fathom a lifespan like that.
It really is.
Okay, so we've talked about their appearance, their incredible tech, even glimpses into their society.
Yeah.
But his story also touches on something that's been a topic of speculation for decades. Government secrecy.
It's true. By the time Hall started talking about his experiences publicly, the idea of UFOs and cover-ups was already in the public consciousness.
Think Roswell, Area 51. Hall's account, with the details about the Air Force, it just adds another layer to this whole narrative.
It does make you wonder, what else are they keeping from us?
I know, right? It's a bit unnerving. Like, what if there's this whole hidden reality operating right under our noses?
And we're just clueless.
Exactly. It raises questions about transparency, accountability.
It's like we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg.
Maybe there are tons of other stories out there waiting to be told.
Stories that could completely change how we understand the world.
It makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does. Hall's story, whether you believe it or not, it challenges us to confront some pretty big questions.
For sure. I mean, if a species like this exists, with their technology, their capabilities, what does it say about our place in the universe?
It makes everything seem so much bigger, more mysterious.
It's both exciting and a little terrifying, isn't it?
Definitely both.
I think one of the biggest takeaways from Hall's story is that we need to be willing to question our assumptions.
Embrace the unknown.
Exactly. Be open to the possibility that reality is far stranger than we currently imagine.
Well said.
So, where do we go from here?
That's a great question. I think the best we can do is to stay curious, keep exploring.
And maybe, just maybe, we'll uncover more pieces of this puzzle.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the incredible world of Charles Hall and the Tall Whites.
What a journey.
We've covered so much ground, but there's still so much to explore.
Absolutely. This is just the beginning.
Remember, the universe is full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered, so keep those minds open and those imaginations fired up.
Until next time, keep searching for those extraordinary truths.
So we've talked about their appearance, their crazy tech, even a little about their society.
Right, and the whole government secrecy angle.
Yeah, that's a big one. It's like this underlying theme throughout Hall's whole story.
It's hard to ignore, especially when he's talking about the Air Force and these technology exchanges.
I mean, if he's telling the truth, it really makes you question what's going on behind closed doors.
Absolutely. What are they hiding? What do they know?
Yeah.
It's a rabbit hole for sure.
One thing that really got me thinking was what Hall said about the Tall Whites' longevity.
Oh, yeah, their lifespans. He said they could live for like 700 years, right?
Yeah, 700 years. Can you even imagine that?
Honestly, it's hard to wrap my head around it. To live that long, to see so much history.
He said their aging process was different, too. They'd go through these growth spurts even as adults.
So they'd keep getting taller.
Yeah, but their internal organs didn't grow at the same rate. So they actually became more fragile as they got older.
Huh. So it wasn't all sunshine and roses. It had its downsides.
It makes you think about our own obsession with longevity. Are we chasing something that might not even be that great?
Interesting point. It's like, what's the point of living longer if your body can't keep up?
Exactly. Quality over quantity, right?
Right. But it does make you wonder, how do they view time? With those lifespans, their whole perception of life and death must have been totally different.
I know. Did Hall ever mention anything about their beliefs, their spirituality?
Not really. He mostly focused on the practical aspects of their interactions. But it would be fascinating to know how they viewed the universe, their place in it.
It's another reminder of how much we still don't know about them.
It is. But even with the limited information we have, Hall's story brings up some pretty big questions. I mean, if a species like this really does exist, what does it say about us? About our place in the cosmos?
It's humbling, isn't it?
Totally. It makes you realize just how vast and mysterious the universe really is.
And how much we still have to learn.
Exactly.
Well, I think we did a pretty good job of exploring Charles Hall's account.
I think so too. It's been quite a journey.
We've covered a lot of ground, from their advanced technology to their strange culture, and of course the whole mystery surrounding their presence here on Earth.
And the big question, what does it all mean?
Right. What does it all mean? I guess that's for each of us to decide.
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's open to interpretation.
It is. But one thing's for sure, Hall's story challenges us to think outside the box, to question what we think we know.
And to stay curious.
Absolutely. To keep looking up at the stars and wondering what else is out there.
Well said.
Well, that wraps up another deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring those mysteries. Who knows what we'll uncover next?